Paul, good morning. Thank you for joining, and thanks everybody for joining this edition of Leaders Ledger. I'm super excited to have an old good friend and I would even dare say mentor here to join me for this conversation. Paul van der Steen is not only an accomplished professional, as you probably saw from the notes that I sent before, but also a wonderful human being that has a lot of depth and a lot of facets, as you will see through our conversation. So the idea, as you all know, is to get a little bit of a glimpse inside the career of accomplished professionals and senior leaders who, just like you or I, are human beings, and they had a learning journey. And it's, I think, enriching for us all to hear about their learnings, about the things that they faced, about their reflections as they had this, throughout their journey. So without further ado, I give you Paul van der Steen. Paul, welcome.
Hey, Eduardo. It's so nice to see you, and good morning or good afternoon, everybody.
So how's everything in the Netherlands? I hear that the weather's quite warm, and this is atypical.
I think it's more evidence of the global warming in action. I think we have very, very high temperatures at the moment in the Netherlands. It's very unusual.
So enjoy it while it lasts, my friend.
Complaining at all.
So Paul, I think that if we think about anybody who might be watching this conversation, one of the things that I believe they would be curious about is how did you see your career when you started? What was your vision of what your career would be? And maybe if you could start that by saying, hey, what did you study, or what did you, back in those years, what were your aspirations for your future?
My vision of when is actually, maybe it's fun to share, is when I was, because I studied economics, macroeconomics, actually, international macroeconomics. And when I was still at high school making up a choice for what shall I do, actually, my dad was an accountant, also in large corporate. So the last thing, Eduardo, I wanted to become as a teenager, obviously, was to go in the same financial direction, right?
Of course.
I did an independent assessment at the bureau, and lo and behold, what came out as the preferred advice, a finance education. So at least in the finance education, because I really wanted to not be exactly copying my dad, I actually didn't do business finance initially or accounting. I really went more in the direction of macro and international economics, thinking that would get me to the Tree of Finance in the Netherlands, or maybe the IMF, or these sort of career tracks. So that was my original plan. And then things went completely different at some stage. That was actually how I started off.
And
go ahead.
Please go.
No. And then when I graduated from university, actually the labor market in the Netherlands at the time was really tough. There was a lot of unemployment. And also the jobs at the Ministry of Finance or logical places were not so easy to get into. A professor in business economics tipped me off for a vacancy at Philips. And Philips was actually at that time, Philips Electronics, I'm not sure everybody is familiar with it, but it was at that time a very large conglomerate of businesses where healthcare, what is the core today, was only a smaller part. There's consumer conductors, components, television, CDs, media, you name it.
Baby products, diaper, like everything. I remember everything was sold by Philips. So huge company back in the day. Not that it's not big now, but it was huge back then.
Way bigger than when I joined Philips. I think there were 400,000 people working for it, 70,000 in the Netherlands. It was probably the biggest company in the Netherlands for sure. Anyway, long story short, Philips was that big that they also had a sort of macroeconomic finance kind of department in their Treasury department. And there they looked for a vacancy. And that's how I entered Philips. That's how I started my career in Philips. Never for a minute thinking that I would end my career there after only 36 years and never going to another company again, which these days is more unusual. But even for me at that time, I'd never realized that I would, that I would have so much fun with one company, that my career would stay there. I had no idea at the time, but that's how life evolved.
And that's an interesting aspect Paul, that at least people that in my new line of work, as I work with people and as I coach some individuals, what I hear more is that the younger generations, when I say this, I feel like I'm, dating myself when I sound super old, but younger people tend to be less loyal today to their companies than what probably you and I felt like when we started. So where you spent long amounts of times in companies. And I find that that's a curious perspective in let's say, a generational change. Is that something that you encountered throughout your career, that as you grew within Philips and learning the ways of Philips, did you, run into people who did not feel the same attachment? And was that a disconnect, an adjustment that you needed to make when working with those people?
Yeah, I think I'm from a generation which probably is more loyal to one employer, and also my mindset that changed maybe over the year when I got older. But certainly initially, my modus operandi was, if I do a good job, people will see it, and then new opportunities will come along. And actually, to be honest, to a large extent, that is actually how I built my career. I didn't really have a very deliberate plan, or I want to get promoted in 1 year and then I want to go there. My main driver was actually I want to do something where I can learn and do more challenging stuff. That was the main driver, also throughout my career. And that's actually what brought me at the end of the career towards executives levels. But I think it's fine that I think that I've definitely seen when I was manager of people that younger generations are more eager or sometimes more impatient and also want the experiences in more than one company. I think I don't have a problem with that at all. I think everybody should look and manage their own career to the best of their. They said it how it works out best. However, it works out best for them, and to be very assertive and look around beyond your own company you work. I think is probably a good thing. With hindsight, and I would start my career at this moment, I would probably do the same. Nevertheless, if you are with a good large company, which Philips definitely was and still is, there were so many opportunities around that I always found myself that I run into a new Paul, can you do this? Or Paul, we would like you to do this, before I even got maybe 1 or 2 periods with a little bit less, but throughout this long period in Philips, that's more or less how my career developed. Particularly in a finance role, because my career was a finance career. Yeah, there were so many opportunities. I've been in Treasury, I've been in M&A, I've been in consumer business, in lighting business, in healthcare business, semiconductor factories, I've been in commerce. Always something new to be done. So for me, the common denominator was trying to get new, exciting learning experiences. And if you do that, then you also build up your complete breadth of knowledge and know-how. And that actually then at the end sets you up for bigger and higher ground. So that's how it works for me.
I mean, I think that in what you said, there's so much to unpack and so many reflections to make. And maybe if I summarized a couple of them, or at least a couple of things that stood out to me that I'll also highlight, because I believe they're super valuable. One is we tend to feel like when we're younger, many people tend to feel like there's a clock that's ticking. And people seem to get centered on the fact that, hey, I need to get promoted. I need to take the next step, or I need to go up to the next level. And what I hear you say, and what I've heard other senior leaders say is, it's less about that and it's more about what can you contribute? What's the next challenge? What are the things that are going to stretch you? What are things that are not easy that you will need to focus on? Because that's kind of what your experience was. You were not thinking, I got to get promoted today, or maybe at some point I'll ask you that question in a minute, but it was more about the challenge, the things that you did, et cetera, right? So I think that was an important part of it. And then the other one that I also heard you say was the loyalty, but it didn't just really come from the loyalty as much as it was from the different things that you always had to do in the company. Is that a fair summarization, Paul?
Yeah, that's absolutely.
And so what was your first promotion when you joined? What was the first thing that you did after you got promoted when you started managing people?
Oh my gosh. My first role was in this role in the Treasury department, finance department. And already after 1 or 2 years working there, I came to the realization, if I want to be relevant and do fun things in Philips, then the Treasury department is limited if you look at the scope. And maybe I should do a banking career or something like that. And actually, I thought Philips was an interesting company. So I actually decided, also went back to the university to do a bit more on the business and accounting topics, to do some postgraduate education on that. And then actually I navigated myself from a Treasury department first into a controller, assistant controller role. That was the vast number of roles in Philips. It was all what we call controller or finance roles. Basically then became possible for me. So in that period I had was a sort of a sidekick for the CFO of one of the divisions of Philips, and could basically learn a lot in a 1-year frame, and took it from there.
And I think that the other, I know you, and I know how thorough you are and how conscientious you are when you do your job. And this is well in character that you did this, right? So you started, then you saw opportunities, but you also saw the need for new learning, for new skills, and you went and got them. So you went back to school, you focused on the more specific skill sets that I think open doors. And I just wanted to underline it because when as individuals, we want to grow, I believe that it cannot just be because we're sitting there waiting for thunder to strike. You proactively need to get the skills that you need. You proactively need to push yourself. You proactively need to force yourself to grow. And this is so much in character for you that I cannot even start to recognize that you're very, very thorough, and that you went and did that. So how did you view your career at that point? So as you started and as you go to school and started getting that education, were you thinking, someday I'm going to get to the C-level and I want to report to the CEO, or I want to be part of the executive committee, or I want to lead? What was your thought process regarding your career? Did you think out that far, or how were you looking at it?
At that age, let's say late 20s or early 30s, or was it late 20s probably, I really wasn't in the mindset I want to become a CFO. I was much more focused on, do I learn, and is my current role exciting enough? I was always very much focused on, I want to do something where I learn and develop myself and where I'm being challenged. And do I like the people I work with? Those things were very important to me. And my thought process has always been, and I think that's also how I built the reputation in the company, is to really do a good damn job of what you're doing. First, I was never so much I need to be, or I have to be promoted. What I was really determined on, I really wanted to have exciting things to do. So I've been a few times to my boss at the time, can I do this project, or can I do this, if I thought they were exciting or difficult. And usually they were quite willing to support me in that.
I think there too, it's an important thing that you did. I can imagine that your career would have looked different had you not gone to your boss and said, hey, do you have anything challenging for me to do, or anything exciting, or is there anything, here's my hand, right? I can help you. I believe that that's a big differentiator, certainly in people, at least in my career that I managed. I thought that was a big standout, nice, positive sign that this was talent, and you went and did that. And I've been taking a few notes here as you go. And I also recognize that you focused on the learning. So what's going to stretch me? What's going to make me learn new things? What's going to be exciting, which is in and of itself, learning something new, putting yourself out there, I think was exciting as well. And those are just things that I believe reinforce how you started to develop your career.
Yeah.
And, Paul, as you were growing your career, do you think, or at which point in your career evolution did you start to sort of see that at the end of that road you were going to get to where you eventually got to CFO, or to being part of the CEO's inner circle? At what time did you start to kind of gain clarity that's where you were going?
That's probably my fourth role, I would say, was I mentioned I took this more or less sidestep to become the sidekick of the CFO, just to get knowledgeable about more the accounting and forecasting and planning processes of the company, right? And then from that, actually, it already went quite fast. I got first into a semiconductor factory in the Netherlands basically as a plant controller, small accounting department there as well, which was a good learning experience. And then from that, I think I was also one of the other CFOs had heard of me and already, I guess, had a little bit of a talent recognition going on. So he put me in a small business team. From there, actually, I got an offer again after 2 years from the guy who was running the Philips M&A department, who wanted some young talent with a finance background to help out with all the M&A deals Philips was doing. And there were quite a lot at the time. I went for that one, again, from this, let's do something completely new, because I'd never done M&A, right? So I got the experience of doing completely different than being more in a factory administration, factory controlling environment or small business controlling. And then after I'd done that 2 or 3 years, learned a lot, then actually the same CFO who had me in the business controlling role had picked me up, said, "Hey, Paul, I now got a nice job for quite a larger business. I want you to become the head of finance or the CFO or the controller, however you want to call it, of the business. But you need to decide very quickly, and I need you in a month from now." And then again, because I trusted, was also a bit of a coach and mentor for me. So I said yes to that. And then from that, actually was sent to the US. I worked for a period in Palo Alto in California. And at that moment, actually, I started to realize, because also I was so much in demand, if you want, in the right direction. At that time, I was already promoted to director. And I was quite young. I was in my mid-30s then, or early 30s even, I think. And so then it became clear, if you're senior director in your mid-30s and you're a lot of demand, and it's not, I never had it in my mind, I need to be, it was quite likely that it was to happen. And indeed, I think even before I was 40, I became into the executive ranks, which was quite young at the time.
That's super impressive. And I believe that's also very inspirational. There's something that jumped at me, Paul, as you were going through that, which is the importance of your brand. Were you ever thinking of yourself as a brand as you were going through your evolution, or were you not? Because the reason I'm asking you the question is because I have this conviction that you always have a personal brand, regardless of whether you want to or not. It's just you build it through taking action or through not taking action, through working thoroughly or through working shoddily. You're still building a brand. But not everybody is aware that he or she is building one or destroying one. How did you think about your brand? Did you ever have that? Yeah.
If I'm brutally honest, at that time, I never really thought as I need to build a brand or that my own is basically, but that's more who I am. I just wanted to do a good damn job. So I've always said, well, you need to say what you do and do what you say. Be reliable. If I make an agreement on that day, you get something from me as a sort of personal pride. That's how I operated, and that obviously then helped. If you now in career look from a career perspective, that's also how you build your brand. But for me, it was not what I'm going to do to build a brand. It was more how I work and who I am, which helped me, I think, to that people recognize that. But I think it is very important to have a few. If you can do that constantly, it's obviously even better to really realize how you're being seen by people who can influence your career, and what kind of traits will be looking for, and therefore what you mentioned as building your brand.
Because I think that all of the things that you said are just the right things that people need to do if they want to grow their career, right? So I like you said, I would imagine that you were not actively thinking, hey, here I am, pull the product. How do I market that product? What's the brand and how do I market it? But at the same time, you were building a brand. And you mentioned a little while ago, I'm here looking at my notes, you were offered to go to the US because somebody saw you. And because somebody decided this is talent that I need to invest on, therefore, I'm going to put some money down on the table to send him to the US. That made you visible. When you were in Palo Alto, you became a director. You were in demand because people knew of you. Even if you were not promoting yourself and shouting, hey, here I am, your work was, your quality was, your dedication was, your willingness to do things that were different or risky or not what you were used to do every day. So I would say that that's probably a fair summary, that if you stretch yourself, if you demand the best of yourself, even if it's painful or if it's uncomfortable, and if you do your very best, that'll start to happen. And so that brings another question. What are your thoughts in terms of, quote unquote, letting your job speak for itself, letting your work speak for itself, as opposed to you're making it evident that you are doing things well? So in other words, do you believe that you have to toot your own horn a little bit to make yourself visible? Let people know that you did something well, even if it's not bragging, as opposed to just, hey, I'm very quiet, I'm back here just doing my job. What are your thoughts in terms of self-promoting or not, even if it's not a blatant self-promotion?
Yeah, you hit, I think, on an important point. I think if you are very modest sitting in the corner, it also won't work, right? But for me, it is not so much about promoting yourself, but if you're really active and share your opinions and ask for, if you see interesting assignments, which you think you can do or where you can help, if you step in, it's actually a way where you, because I hate the idea of promoting you. A lot of people working in my environment who I thought were making so much noise about themselves, which just annoyed me and it didn't help in my mind. So for me, self-promoting is more a negative than a positive, but making sure that you are visible by the stuff what you do and showing authentic where you can help out or reach, and then it's fine to make noise on the back of the content or a point you want to make then it's powerful, but not just empty. If it's empty. Indeed.
Yeah, I think that that's such an important takeaway, that you need to stretch yourself, like we've said, do your very best. And if you have the self-assuredness that you did your very best, use your voice, make yourself heard, be there, be present, be visible, and never be shy about the things that you've done. But the prerequisite is you need to have done it. You cannot just be as your way around yelling how awesome you are just because you say so. There's got to be proof points. There's got to be things that you delivered before you earned the right to start saying that. Would you agree?
Yeah, of course.
And did you ever have a colleague who was indeed bragging or self-promoting emptily? Did you ever run across such an individual in your career? And how did you handle it?
I think there have been people, it's not to the extreme, it was always completely empty, but you have some persons who make more noise about themselves or are more so that's self-promoting. How did I deal with that? I never liked it much, so they were not my friends.
And so as you were going, and again, a brilliant career, I remember in one of our conversations before, obviously today, you shared with me your experience in Palo Alto, or parts of your experience in Palo Alto. So you spent some time there. Then you came back to the Netherlands, and your career was soaring. Your brand was visible. Everybody wanted a piece of Paul. Did you ever make a mistake that, looking back, now you're like, oh man, I don't know how I survived that, or not even that bad, but oh man, that was painful. I learned from it. Could you share with us maybe some mistake that you made that was painful at the time, but then enriched you and you learned from?
Sure. I'm happy to share a few. If that would be
a few.
One which I remember quite vividly is when I was in the business role in Palo Alto, we also had to present our monthly results in the business meeting. At those times,